Hello everyone, welcome to the Old Man in the Read. My name is Jerry. Today I'm going to attempt to do a video discussing the books I've read by one of my all-time favorite writers, Anatole France. France was born in 1844 and died in 1924 and won the Nobel Prize in 1921. So most of the books are very dated, but I just absolutely love his writing. He was a poet and a novelist, and his writings were mostly satire, usually satirizing either French society or religion. Now he was, as far as religion, I wouldn't say he was an atheist. But he was definitely a skeptic. And so what he satirizes was religious philosophy and beliefs itself, and not necessarily satirizing God. But he has absolutely beautiful prose, very lyrical, but because he wrote so long ago, his writing is a bit dated, but still just excellent. So anyway, I'll begin showing the books. The first book he wrote or published was published in 1879, and this is Jocasta and the Famished Cat. And this is actually two novellas. The first is about a sleazy old man who has convinced his daughter to marry an old wealthy man just to gain access to his money. The second story was just really excellent. A lot of subtle humor in this, but this was about a young black man, Reine, and he's being tutored by a Haitian, but Reine is more interested in painting than studying. But excellent book. The next book he published was, and his second book, it was in 1881, The Crime of Sylvester Bonnard. And this is probably one of my all-time favorite books. I absolutely love this book. I've read it a couple of times. I liked it so much. In fact, I don't know when I've read a book that I enjoyed as much as this. But this is it's the story of a gentle old man who has dedicated his life to the study of books. But then circumstances enter into his life that just disrupt his totally uneventful life. Anyway, it's a great story. There is a quote I want to give from the book that I really thought was great. He's with a young woman in his home, and she begins, "What a lot of books," she screamed, "and have you read them all, Monsieur Bonnard?" "Alas, I have," I replied, "and that is just the reason that I do not know anything. For there is not a single one of those books which does not contradict some other book, so that by the time one has read them all, one does not know what to think about anything. That is my condition, madame." I thought that is such a great quote, and it's so true for anybody who reads a lot of books. The next book he published was in 1882, The Aspirations of Jean. And this is about young Jean, whose mother dies when he's a baby. But before she dies, she makes her husband promise that he will provide an education for his son. The father is a poor bookbinder, but he agrees to do that, and so he struggles throughout the years to earn enough money to provide a good education for his son. And eventually Jean earns his degree, but then disastrous results come after that. In 1883, he published Honeybee, and this actually has been translated a couple of times because there's another book, same book, that's been published as Bee, the Princess of the Dwarves. But this is just an absolutely fabulous fairy tale that he wrote. It's about Honeybee and her young boyfriend George, who are captured by dwarves when they're out at an outing in the forest. Now, she is held for 7 years, but she's treated as a princess, and she has actually captured the heart of the King Locke, who is the ruler of the dwarves. But just really exceptionally well written, a very enjoyable fairy tale. Next, in 1889, Balthazar was published, and this is basically 7 short stories, just beautiful prose and mostly satire, so excellent book. In 1890, he published Thais, and this is about a hermit monk named Paphnutius, excuse my pronunciation, who lives in total deprivation. He denies all pleasures to himself and just lives a life of deprivation. But he takes it upon himself to try to save a woman, Thais, who is a prostitute, but she is considered the most beautiful woman in existence. But he has decided to save her, and it's because he actually secretly desires her, but he has denied it and doesn't even acknowledge it to himself. He just acts or thinks that he's acting at the direction of God. In 1892, he published Mother of Pearl, and this is another compilation of short stories. These are very religious short stories, and unlike most of what he wrote, not really satirical. They're just short stories on religion. In 1892, he published At the Sign of the Reine Petitquois. And I actually have 2 books. I didn't realize it when I purchased them, but they're the same story, just different translations. One is titled The Sign of the Reine Petitquois. The other is simply The Queen Petitquois. But they're basically the same stories, and it's kind of interesting to read them, compare each of the stories because of the differences in the translation, but the same story. But this is about young Jacques, who is the son of a meat seller, and at the age of 6, he's put to work turning a spit. This is a job that had been done by their dog, but the dog has aged, and so Jacques is to replace him. While he's turning the spit, they place books on his lap for him to study. Then a visiting monk comes and is impressed by Jacques and decides to take him on as a tutor. And just hilarious consequences follow that. In 1894, published The Red Lily. Again, very lyrical prose, but very different from any of his other books. This is a love story between a married woman and an artist, and it, to me, I believe, is autobiographical about an affair he had with a married woman. In 1895, published The Garden of Epicurus, and this is a mixed bag of essays and just musings. In fact, the first part of the book is lots of just short little musings that he had that he evidently jotted down as they came to mind, and then were just compiled and put into the publication. And then the second half of the book is more essays that qualify as essays, and a lot of them are imaginary discussions with various philosophers. In 1895, he published The Well of St. Clair, and again, this is short stories. Most of them take place in the Middle Ages, and they're just satires of religious thinking. In 1897, he published The Elm Tree on the Mall. This is a satire of French society in general. This is an introduction to an ongoing character in several of his other books. It's M. Bergeron. The M, I believe, is for Monsieur, but M. Bergeron, and it's him sitting on a bench under an elm tree with an Abbé Lantagne, and they're having discussions, basically. They each have different or completely opposite opinions on and views on various things, but they still maintain a civil discourse. It's most of the discussions are about government, basically the republic versus the monarchy, and religion. But I think he uses Bergeron a lot of his own opinions. The next book was published in 1897, The Wicker Work Woman, and again, this is M. Bergeron, and it's more commentary on French society. This is based in the late 1800s, but he ridicules the behavior of the military in France, and he discusses capital punishment and believes that in modern society that should not be still something that's done. And again, he was talking about modern society, but this was in the late 1800s. And again, that's mostly him, France, expressing his own opinions on things. In 1899 is The Amethyst Ring. Again, another book featuring M. Bergeron. And this is more satire on religion, also anti-Semitism, and just French society as a whole. There's a passage in the book that I thought is very typical of what he has to say, and I thought I would quote it. The system of Copernicus and Galileo is absolutely irreconcilable with Christian philosophy. And yet, you know that, both in France itself and the world over, it has penetrated even into the elementary schools without the very smallest modification being made in the theological conceptions it was calculated to annihilate. Science has never harmed religion, and the absurdity of religious practice may be clearly demonstrated without lessening the number of persons who indulge in it. That's a very typical of his philosophy. In 1900, he published Cleo and the Chateau de Vala. My pronunciations of French are terrible. I have a hard enough time just pronouncing English words. But this is 5 short stories and 1 novella. And the novella is about a corrupt minister of finance who accumulates a huge fortune and builds a gigantic mansion. In 1903, published The Mummer's Tale, and this is about 2 young men who are both competing for the hand of a very vain actress. But that's that story. In 1905, The White Stone was published, and this features a group of Frenchmen who are in a discussion about world affairs that include religion and colonialism and the racist behavior that European countries have toward or to other countries. The last part of the book was really good. It has a protagonist who's transported to the year 2270. This is, I think, in a dream. But he arrives at a utopian world where humanity has been able to get rid of their worst instincts. The part I really enjoyed about this trip into the future was, about the technology that's being used, because all it is just better enhancements of the technology that existed in the early 1900s. In 1901 is this beautiful book. It comes actually in a case, but it's nicely illustrated. It's called Qua Bell, and this is actually not much more than a short story that's been made into a book, but it's about an impoverished vegetable seller who pushes his cart through the city streets selling his vegetables. Then he's told to move along by the police, and but he doesn't move fast enough, so he's arrested. And it's about the consequences that happened to him after that event. And it's basically about the injustice of the powerful against the weak. In 1908, he published Penguin Island. This is a satire of the Catholic religion, and it's about a priest who mistakenly baptizes a colony of penguins, and so God is forced to turn them into humans, but very humorous satire. In 1908, this is just a hilarious play that he published. It's titled "The Man Who Married a Dumb Wife," and it's about a judge who is married to a woman who can't speak, and so he takes her to a doctor to try to cure this. The reason he wants her cured is because he wants her to solicit bribes from people that he's making judgments against. But he soon finds out that the cure is worse than the disease itself. In 1908, published The Merry Tales of Jacques Tremol. This is short stories that are all set in the 1400s. The best story, or a couple of the best stories I thought, was one was about Charlemagne and 12 of his knights. Each of them are making boasts to the king to impress him, but then they have to back them up. Another is about Paris that's under siege, and so priest Brother Jacques decides to take matters into his own hands, and he invokes the power of God to defend the city, which results in some dire consequences. In 1909, he published The Seven Wives of Bluebeard, and this is actually 4 short novellas in one book, and they all appear to be parodies of the fairy tales of Charles Perrault. There's 2 of them that obviously are, and I'm not that familiar with the Perrault's fairy tales to really know the other 2, but they kind of read like they are. In 1912, he published The Gods Will Have Blood. This has also been published as The Gods Are Athirst, so different translations. But this takes place during the French Revolution, and it's about a mediocre artist who has become a magistrate, and he sends hundreds of innocent people to their death by guillotine. In 1914 is The Revolt of the Angels, and this is one of France's better known satires of religion. This is about the guardian angel of a son of a wealthy man who becomes bored and starts reading books that are in the library of the wealthy man's library. And after most of the books he reads are on science and religion, and after reading these, he decides that God is an imposter, and so he organizes other fallen angels to conduct a revolt. In 1922, he published The Bloom of Life. This is basically autobiography, and it's Anatole France reminiscing about various periods of his life from early childhood into adulthood. This finally is just a book of short stories, The Golden Tales of Anatole France, and I think all of these stories are in some of the other books I've shown. And last is one of those thin little reprints that I came across, and it's The Miracle of the Great Saint Nicholas. And this, I think, is one of the Perrault parodies that were in that one book. But this is about Bishop Nicholas, or this is The Miracle of the Great Saint Nicholas. It's about Bishop St. Nicholas, who performs miracles, and he performs a miracle to resurrect 3 children who were chopped up and put into a pickling jar for 7 years, leading to some disastrous results. So that's everything I read by Anatole France. I think I've read almost everything he wrote, not quite everything. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I want to thank you for watching. Bye.